Here is my candle holder that has a bit of decorative text. My circles are cut out to 1 5/8. So let's walk through what we would do to establish a file that would be appropriate for running on the CNC machine. I'm going to go to my cam tool, and the first thing I always do is a setup file that establishes the size of my 2x4, and it puts the coordinate system in the 0 point. Wherever I place this thing right here is going to mark the 0 position. So I could put it in the center, but that's awkward because how do I identify that on my piece of wood? That's doable. I find it a bit easier just to put it on a corner. So I'm just going to select one of these little points and put it right in the corner. And then the only other thing I want to do is to not add any stock. So I want my piece of wood to be just raw piece of wood. So setup's taken care of, and it's identified my raw piece of wood. And now I'm going to carve away my 3 candle holes. So let's do it as a 2D adaptive. Let's pick from our library a 1/4 inch bit. And take a look at your numbers here. I'm aiming for about 50 inches per minute on my feed rate, and then other numbers that represent lead ins and lead outs, we're going to aim for about 30 or 35. Those things all look pretty good. Now it's asking me to identify the pocket that I actually want cut out. So those would be the lowest point in the contour that it's going to cut to. These are going to give me retraction heights. Typically defaults are fine. And this one, I typically just get rid of the stock to leave. I don't want to leave any stock behind. And I think the last one, as long as the helix pattern is selected there for ramping, I think we're good. So let's let it generate that toolpath. And then typically when I run my simulator, I am going to click on the setup button, and then if I run it, I like to select stock so that I can actually see the wood. So my wood is just a raw piece of wood. Now as I use the CNC milling bit, I'm going to see what impact my toolpath has on that piece of wood. You can always change the speed in which your toolpath is operating by adjusting that circle underneath. So that operation that we've done with the 1/4 inch bit seems to take care of the candle holder cylinders. Great, so let's see if we can attack some of this text. Now this text is pretty detailed, so I'm only going to pick the letter F on my faith for now, just to demonstrate so this video doesn't take forever. Some text might be easier to select than others. So I'm going to do a milling operation that's actually going to outline the edges all the way around it. So it's going to take a bit at a very shallow cut and go around all of the contour of that letter. That is called a tracing operation. Let's give it a shot. So this tracing operation, I'm going to use a pointed bit. My best pointed bit is a 1/2 inch bit. So it says 1/2 inch, but it's got a center V. I'm going to give that one a go. And then I'm just going to double check that my numbers here are 50 for the actual cutting process, and then 30s or 35s for numbers below that. I'm going to select that bit, and now that I've selected the bit, I need to adjust my numbers just a little bit. So I'm going to go 50, 35, looks good. So 30, 50 for my cutting process, and then 30s and 35s for my other lead-ins and lead-outs. Keep it straightforward. So here's the tricky part, is to actually select my text. So to make it a little easier, I'm just going to actually select the top contour of my text, and then we can adjust the depth in a different way. So if I select that letter F, well, let's actually see how long it takes to select around the contour. And then if you select them wrong, so if you select text, you can hit the trash can and just say, hey, you know what? I didn't really mean to pick that. So I think I'm going to, video could take days with certain text being selected. The F selected pretty clean. So let's just work with that one for now, and then because the process of selecting text in some fonts, you just go to it and it'll highlight the entire word and it makes it really easy. This particular font is trickier. So now that I've selected what I actually wanted to trace out, let's take a look at retraction heights. Again, defaults are totally fine. And then in this case, the actual number that you can move the depth of it. So if you find that the depth in the simulator or in real life when you actually execute it is not deep enough, you could adjust your depth there. So going down a point, negative 0.05 will knock it below the surface and actually give you a deeper cut. So you could keep on going down in the negative until you end up with the appropriate depth and cut aesthetic that you're looking for. So let's try that. 0.05 is pretty shallow, but my text is actually pretty fine and detailed, so I don't really want it to be a huge cut. And then my defaults on the last step look all right. So now it looks like we have both a trace and the candle cutaway. So if I hit my simulator and tool isometric here, take a look at what's going to happen. Let's run it and take a look at the second operation with the text. So let's take a look. So it's cut it out, but it's a little bit unclear as to what the depth of that cut is. So it's identified my F, but if you look at the green, it actually looks like it's a tad bit sloppy. So let's see if we can demonstrate that the one operation within the trace, so we can always go back into the trace, and that one number that I was identifying as being my depth control, let's try to keep it really, really shallow there and just repeat in the simulator for that cut. So now if I take a look at how much wood is being removed from the surface, I feel like it's a much more subtle cut and not so aggressive. I think I'm going to leave it there. So selecting the rest of your text, picking any other contours that you would need, and then you would post-process this. So let's assume that I'm done. The post-process method of actually making a file that would be sent to the CNC would represent our shopbot post-process file, where we would want to send it as an SBP file. So NC extension, so you'd give it a name. In this case, I could just call it candle or candle holder. And then I post-process and save it on a flash drive in order for it to be transferred over to the CNC machine, and that's the end of it. I'm going to put this one on my desktop just so I could access it quicker. And then it shows us what that G-code file that goes to the that will go to the CNC, what it looks like. So this thing's called Candle Holder SBP, and it gives it a whole lot of technical numbers and letters in order for it to execute all of its operations. So I think we'll end it there and transfer that over to the CNC machine and give it a shot.